So today we're going to talk about ensuring enterprise readiness with delivering quality results with Automation Cloud. Today, Kevin and myself are going to be your hosts. Kevin, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. My name is Kevin Mooney. I lead customer security for UiPath globally. So everything from security best practices to addressing your questions and you're dealing with any sort of security issues you may have. It comes to me and my team, and we're here to help you in your journey for RPA and automation in general.
And I'm Sebastian. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Orchestrator and Security at UiPath. And today on the agenda, we're going to discuss the need for automation governance. If you could move the slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about the UiPath business automation platform, looking at security and features. We're going to discuss governance and security with Orchestrator and Automation Ops. Delve a bit into preventive governance and our promise to you, and then have 15 minutes Q&A session at the end. So starting with the fundamentals, providing an out-of-the-box enterprise solution such as Automation Cloud starts with a security-first mindset, which is built on three fundamental pillars. Number one, security has to run end-to-end, which is why we've built powerful tools and guardrails across the entire UiPath business automation platform. And we're going to talk about some of these today. Number two, we value your trust above everything else, and we honor that by being fully transparent with our controls and processes. Number three, and this ties into the first two, by being trusted with business critical innovation, we are able to have meaningful conversations and expand our capabilities for all our customers' needs. And that's why I encourage you at the end or during the presentation to engage with us and ask questions. So let's talk a bit about the UiPath business automation platform in general. Obviously, you have specific business outcomes in mind when you start with automation to drive growth or cost transformation, customer experience improvements. Could be a lot of things. Well, these all require you to both build new processes and adapt and improve existing ones. So then your processes exist across your line of business applications and in the work that people do. So you need a platform to bridge these two worlds and build and change your business processes quickly. Now, today's webinar will focus on Automation Cloud as a deployment method, and that's by far the most comprehensive platform that you could choose with a fast automation time to value and high ROI if you're looking at the solution as a new customer. And it's got very flexible enterprise ready capabilities. So today we're going to focus on the operate part of our Automation Cloud capabilities, and more specifically on unified management and governance. So operating mission critical automation programs is no small feat, but luckily we have all the right tools for you to do just that. So we have analytics for you to track, measure, and manage the performance of your entire automation program. We have continuous testing to transform QA to a value provider, and we have unified management and governance, which is today's focus for the entire integrated platform and automation program, and our flexible deployment options, of which Automation Cloud is probably the easiest to get into. Let's look at what unified management and governance actually means. So with our integrated platform, you can manage the entire automation lifecycle across all automations. You get, what do you get? You get a single command center to manage governance, security, compliance, and deploy services, as many as you need to start quickly and remain flexible in the long term. So there are a few main benefits for you here. First of all, management and governance for both the integrated platform and your automation program gives you full flexible control over, on the one hand, the entire automation lifecycle, and on the other, the tools that you're using to run automation. So this means you get one single portal to conveniently manage users, automations, platform-wide settings. And users can interact with automations naturally, and they can delegate as much decision-making as they need to with, for example, long-running workflows that allow user input in complex situations. So then centralized governance becomes easy to implement as well, since you can separate by organization, by department, or by tenant. You can give each user role access to the right tools that they need to build, to run, to test automations. And you can also connect every automation to its rightful owner. We have granular governance inheritance that we're going to discuss in a bit, that allows you to define governance settings however you need to, and users or automations will just inherit the appropriate levels of access. With oversight over the entire automation program, you basically are in control of everything automation related. It's also easy for IT teams to do all of this because we have also an integrated user and admin experience. So for example, when you opt for Automation Cloud as a deployment method, it's easy to say upgrade everyone to the latest version automatically. So in true automation fashion, you don't have to manually configure each component when you upgrade. And the users always benefit from the latest capabilities. It all happens seamlessly for them. Last but not least, you can also manage risk more effectively thanks to built-in security and compliance. This ranges from configurable alerts and full audit trails to capabilities such as robot endpoint protection. And all in all, we have these because we believe that in a world where humans and robots work side by side, you need an end-to-end way to manage orchestration, governance, and security. So I'm going to pass it on to Kevin to talk a bit about why you should care about governance and how it all ties into delivering quality results with Automation Cloud.
Thanks, Sebastian. So yeah, why should we care about governance? Well, if you're a business user and you're really just looking at sort of, oh, I have all these things that are manual, or I can improve by helping and automating, then maybe this is not something you think about every day. If you're a security person, you probably look at RPA and say, wow, this is really scary. Because we really do believe you can automate almost anything with our platform. We keep extending the capabilities, we keep adding new features, we keep driving to get you, our customers, the solutions that you need, right? With that, in empowering all of our users to actually automate the things that they do, it comes some risk, right? Especially for those of you who work in regulated environments. So banking, insurance, healthcare, government, even if you don't work in one of those environments, you still have data that you want to work with. You still have information that is critical to your business that you need to protect, right? So we want to ensure that we help you reduce the risk by offering you a true enterprise platform with the controls that align to your business needs and your regulatory needs. There's also a need to, well, quite frankly, get some return on investment, right? No company just buys a product because it's nice to have. We do it because there's something you get in return. It helps your business, and whether that's simply reducing man hours or potentially improving quality control, then that's important to have. And it's important that your tools that you leverage are consistent in nature and have the ability to have some oversight around them, right? In addition to, of course, just driving down cost, right? We don't often think about security features or governance features in driving down costs, but really they do, because the offset of that would be increased risk, or dare I say it, something happens that causes a significant cost because you didn't put controls in place. Right. So Sebastian mentioned a bit about sort of our unified overview. If you've used our cloud, you know that you will sign into a centralized portal where your administration features for the majority of services are all centralized. You see your users in one place. You see your main audit logs in one place. You have your license allocation, all of that. You can deploy services in other regions, right? So data security and excuse me, data sovereignty is very important to a lot of customers. We have customers who are operating only in a certain country. They don't want their data to leave that country because, or that region, because they operate within the laws of that region. We also have global companies where they have perhaps subsidiaries in multiple regions, right? UiPath has expanded its cloud services now to 6 different regions. So US, Europe, Japan, Canada, Singapore, and Australia. You can have your centralized portal located in one of those regions, perhaps where your headquarters is, and then each subsidiary can actually be deployed in their own separate region to ensure that you have true data sovereignty. And that's really important to a lot of customers, because it helps with global regulations, international law. You hope never to deal with any of those things, or be in the case where you're having to deal with international regulations, but we give you these options in case you do. Another thing that I should point out is we actually have a deferred region as well. Basically a environment that we stood up more for our GXP customers, but it helps all enterprise customers. We initially have rolled it out in the US. And what this is basically we have the ability to deploy the current version of our services in our production environment, but then you also have a deferred environment, or a delayed ring, as we call it, if you're familiar with cloud ring deployments, that gets updates roughly 3 weeks after our production deployment. So for customers who have a need for a true QA environment and production environment, this allows you to leverage what we normally think as our production cloud environment as your QA environment, test out changes as they get rolled out, and then you have your production environment in the delayed ring offering 3 weeks later. It really helps for things like quality control, or ensuring that changes are aligned to your organization. All right, so let's get into sort of these platform level features. We have all these services within our cloud, but when you log in, you have settings that help you for organizing and securing the entire platform. The first is single sign-on. Pretty straightforward for many security organizations, but obviously there's a lot of details that you can get into, particularly with SAML and how they work. So we offer single sign-on for Azure AD and SAML 2.0. We're not going to get too far into that in this session, other than to say that we have them available, and you can manage the single sign-on and deployment of users through these mechanisms. And I say that because in the next session in this series, we're going to go deeper into a demo and understanding exactly how those work. We added recently the ability to set custom session timeouts and limit concurrent sessions. So when we initially deployed our cloud, we set it up in a way that allowed people to interact with it, work with it as needed. And we found that many customers preferred to limit the sessions based on a regulatory control or their own internal IT policies. And so you now have the ability to set your own custom timeouts and limit concurrent sessions if you don't want your users to be signing in from more than one device at the same time. And this, of course, helps with things like audit logs because you can trace it exactly to a single session for a user making changes or interacting with our cloud. In a similar vein, we implemented IP range restrictions. So for those of you who have an internal network and all of your users sign in to your internal system, or they VPN into your corporate network first, we've set up the ability for you to create your own custom IP range restrictions. This can allow you to force customers, combined with single sign-on, to only log in through your network. And this may not be for every customer, but it is available to you. It's very customizable. You can set a range or multiple ranges to align for those customers who may have multiple networks or even multiple subsidiaries that would be signing into the same cloud portal. We also added customer managed keys. So the way this works is, all of our services are encrypt data, both at rest and in transit. Now, the data encryption at rest has two forms. We use transparent data encryption for all of our data stores. We use AES 256 keys as our default standard. So everything is encrypted at least at that level. But many of our services also include application level encryption. This means that data is actually encrypted at the application level before it's stored in a database. And it's encrypted with a key that's unique to that tenant or you as a customer. Many of our customers have expressed the need to have some more control over this encryption. So what we've done is we've added an integration to Azure Key Vault, your own Azure Key Vault, where you can provide us what's commonly called a key encrypting key or a wrapping key. And so the key that's used to encrypt all your data is encrypted with the key that you own in your own key store. And the only way to use it is to have access to that key. And in this way, customers can actually control whether or not their data can be read or be encrypted without any involvement with UiPath. It also allows you to rotate that key on your own schedule, aligning again to your IT policy and your regulatory requirements. I already mentioned tenant data regions, but just to reiterate, you can have your portal set up in a single region, say the EU or the US, often wherever you're headquartered, and then have your actual data that's being entered into our various services like document understanding or Orchestrator aligned to where you're actually doing business. And that just helps out with regional laws and regulations. And also the deferred update ring. Very cool feature, especially for life science customers, manufacturing customers, customers that have to deal with GXP and strict quality controls. You get to see a preview of everything that's coming, and then have a separate ring that where those same deployments are going 3 weeks later. This means you still get all the security updates, you still get the latest and greatest content, but you get the opportunity to try everything out, make sure that you can document any changes to conformance in your policies or any changes that might happen in our backend systems. Of course, all of your automations, your activities are still set, regardless of the changes back on the server side. And if we ever do a breaking change for a feature, that's still going to be notified, well in advance, usually 6 months to a year, if not longer. Okay. So within all of the services offered in the cloud, one of the ones that has the most sort of governance and setup features is going to be Orchestrator. Orchestrator is where you connect all your robots. It's where you see the automations. It's really where you're going to connect into sort of your SDLC for your automations, right? So it's important to talk about some of the features here beyond just what's available at the platform. Okay, and I want to call out a few things that, again, are configurable options for you that your company should probably think about. The first is the ability to automatically export robot logs. So when you're using our cloud, robots are going to either operate within your own environment on your machines, right? And this is especially true if you're using attended robots or UiPath Assistant, where your users are working interactively with automations. But it's also true if you are using, say, our automation cloud robots, where we are providing sort of a platform as a service, or our serverless robots, where we're literally providing all the infrastructure, including the robot, and all you have to do is provide the workflow. The robot logs will contain when a robot starts, what automation it's running, any errors that come up, but it can also create, customized logs that your developers insert. So it's important to have this information because it gives insight into what's going on in your network, how robots are interacting with your applications. So we provide the ability to automatically export these directly to a cloud storage blob that you own. And this allows them to be picked up by a SIM or a log collection device where you get insight across all the operations within your network. And then credential stores. So for those of you using unattended robots, your robots have the need to have a credential. They log in on their own, they create a Windows session, they execute automations. They may need additional credentials to log into other applications that don't have single sign-on or aren't connected to Active Directory or your Windows domain. So we integrate with the majority of the privileged access managers of the world. So HashiVault, Beyond Trust, Azure Key Vault, CyberArk. We're Psychotic. We're consistently adding to this list of credential stores that we own. Now, if you are an older customer of UiPath or perhaps not familiar, we originally had our robots and we added Orchestrator to help manage the robots. And when we first added credential stores, robots connected to the credential store directly. And as customers scaled out to, dozens, hundreds, thousands of robots, now we have customers running tens of thousands of robots. It became very cumbersome to have each one of those agents connect to a credential store. So we moved the integration to Orchestrator. Makes perfect sense. You have a single server to server side integration. These robot agents are already connected to Orchestrator, so they have a good flow there. This became a bit problematic though, moving to the cloud, because we ideally have only connectivity from your network to the cloud, and you don't have to open up anything to us. Credential stores, though, present that problem. So we created this thing called the Credential Store Proxy. And what this is basically an API proxy that I'm going to get to into the next slide, but it allows you to leverage a credential store within your network without exposing that credential store to us or to the public internet. Again, I'll show that to you in the next slide. We also added encrypted queues. So I mentioned that application level encryption. So now you can add a per queue encryption key so that your queue data is actually encrypted with a unique key prior to it being stored in the database. This is particularly important if you're using queues with sensitive data, PHI, PII, transaction information. We don't allow PCI data in our cloud, but certainly you will have other types of sensitive data. And encrypted queues also benefit from that bring your own key or customer managed key feature that I mentioned before. And finally, robot endpoint protection. So we have partnered with CrowdStrike so that your robots are sending information to CrowdStrike SIM, and you as or your SOC can see exactly what robots are doing and even set up policies to prevent a robot from doing particular things, or just gain visibility into what a robot's doing versus what a human is doing. Okay? So I'm going to spend just a couple seconds on this, just because this is a new feature and we want to provide a bit of information on it. Okay? So I mentioned robots are always connecting to Orchestrator, and that's how they get their credentials. Now, a robot has a many-to-many relationship between what it executes and the credentials it has. Because you can actually have a single robot installation run a full automation with a single set of credentials, log out, log back in with a different set of credentials, do another automation, and keep doing that. And robots can run 24/7. So we didn't want Orchestrator to connect directly into a credential store because it's probably in your trusted network or restricted zone within your network. So we created this proxy. It installs very much like Orchestrator, either as an IIS web app or as a container service. You have your preference, and this allows you to sort of whitelist a connection just from Orchestrator to the Credential proxy, where there's an authentication mechanism between the two, and then all of your actual connection settings to your credential store reside on the proxy inside your network, presumably in some form of DMZ. And this allows you to then also whitelist again or restrict access between the proxy and the credential store. This works very similar to an application proxy or many of the other similar functions you see for cloud service providers, where access is required from the cloud into your network. It's a much more secure solution while still giving you centralized management over all your credentials across all your robots, across all your automations. Okay, I'm going to move on to automation ops. So automation ops is effectively a policy engine. It is where you can go and create policies and rule sets for robots and developers alike. And it gives you a nice centralized view so that you can organize who's allowed to do what. Many of you probably have a center of excellence or a core set of users or in your organization that deal with nothing but automations. Or maybe you're just starting out. You have one developer who's trying to get things going, but you want to give them some level of restrictions. Or perhaps you're trying to implement a robot for every person. You're trying to allow your users to automate their job. It's a great idea, but you may want to put some restrictions on them just to ensure that they're not going beyond their capabilities, right? So automation ops gives you a centralized place to create policies for what different groups are allowed to do. And you can actually create different rule sets. So we have a static code analyzer built into our robots, into Studio, that allows you to create rules. Now we have a standard set of rules to do things like, hey, don't store passwords in automations. It's a bad idea. Or, don't pull activities to automate from just anywhere. Pull them from only approved places. That could be just the UiPath activity feed, or that could be, some activities that you have pulled down from our third-party partners or community members that you've taken the time to check out yourself and approve, right? This allows you to create rules and enforce them for your developers. Workflow Analyzer can be run as preventative controls. It can also be run as a runtime controls as part of a CI/CD pipeline. So if you do have a true DevOps pipeline for your automations, you can run this as part of it and get errors and warnings to give you an understanding of the risk level of an automation, right? You can also write your own rules fairly easily. So if you have specific rules around, say, oh, I don't want my citizen developers to do particular things, you can write rules around it. But there's also some good rules for, say, certain applications or certain URLs, web applications are blacklisted for particular groups, just because you want to have additional governance around them, or you want to make a better risk determination around their usage. That's all available through the Workflow Analyzer. So it's a very powerful tool for controlling how your users work and how your developers write automations. So Workflow Analyzer is basically sets the rules and can detect the rules. Automation Ops is the policy engine that enforces them. And in fact, Automation Ops is quite granular too. So you can have rules or policies that are put in place at your whole organization level, at your tenant level, groups, or individual users. It gives you a lot of flexibility in determining, how different parts of your business are allowed to automate, what they're allowed to do. And we don't really necessarily want to prohibit anyone from doing anything, but maybe, when a citizen developer tries to automate something against your finance system that is under SOX audits, right? Well, we want to have a little bit more of a code review or something to ensure that we're not giving them too much power without oversight, right? This is all about controlling risk while allowing your organization to automate and expand their operations as much as possible. So bringing this all together, let's look at what does a secure sort of life cycle look like for developing an automation with including our cloud? Okay. So you've got the automation ops or governance file, right? So automation ops, you're setting the policy, you're setting what those rules are. That's your preventative controls, right? And that's available from our cloud. Then we still recommend using a malware scanner. If you've seen a lot of the open source and dependency attacks that have happened in recent years, it's just a good practice to have, right? Workflow Analyzer is then your detective controls. It's already enforced in your preventative, but good idea to include detection, especially for things that aren't hard, fast rules, but you just want warnings. And finally, peer code review, and eventually promotion to Orchestrator coming back to our cloud, right? Orchestrator still has the ability to do a separation of powers, so your developers can push automations. Either maybe they have full control over development tenant or their folder, or just a subset of an Orchestrator tenant. But in your production environment, you likely still want to have somebody to approve that promotion, so that a developer can't just write something and then immediately push into production and start running it, right? You have some oversight there, and we give you a lot of flexibility into how you would do that. Okay, so I've talked about a lot about the features that are available for you to configure, for you to set up. But what do we provide out of the box? So first off, we provide a 3 nines SLA, so 99.9% uptime. If catastrophic event happens and a whole data center goes down, we will recover it or have a recovery time objective of 4 hours, meaning we'll get back up within 4 hours. Usually much faster than that, but that is what we provide. We also have a recovery point objective, meaning how much data could be lost in an absolute worst catastrophic outage of 15 minutes. And that's really because some of the cloud services we use on the back end have a backup cycle of 15 minutes. So some of the Azure data services like SQL and storage blobs, some of them have only go every 15 minutes. We also do a blue-green deployment. And so this is a familiar term for a lot of your cloud service providers, but if you're not familiar with it, it basically means that we have 2 copies of basically everything, so that when we do a deployment, we deploy to 1 copy. So we're running on blue, we'll deploy new updates to green and switch over to green, monitor the results. And if there's any issue, we can immediately swap back over to blue and back and forth. We consistently do that, so we always have an easy way to recover in case of an issue from deployment. We also do a lot of auto scaling. We encourage you to test our cloud for scale. I assure you, we have tested it for a factor or a magnitude well beyond what we currently operate. You can throw as many automations at us as you can imagine. You can expand as many robots as you possibly need, and our cloud will absolutely be able to handle it. We have designed it that way. We have some of the world-class engineers from cloud service providers that have a lot of experience in doing this, and so we can scale to whatever you need. And finally, our compliance and attestations. We're constantly expanding this list, taking your input for what you need in terms of assurance to meet your regulations, to meet your internal risk policies. So we have SOC 2 Type 2 reports available. Currently, we do them in 6-month periods. We also have HIPAA Type 2 reports. For those of you in the healthcare industry operating in the US, those are available for you. We're fully compliant with GDPR. And finally, for our US government customers, we are FedRAMP in process. So we will be getting FedRAMP full authorization fairly soon, but you can find us in the FedRAMP marketplace right now if that's of interest to you. And then at sort of more of the organizational level, our information security management system, it meets the requirements for ISO 27001, and we added the additional control sets for 27017 and 18, as well as our quality management system is conforming to ISO 9001, and we do annual surveillance audits for that, and of course renewals every 3 years. Right? This is just a beautiful slide that my friend Sebastian here created to kind of show the overall security controls and features that I've talked about, sort of wrap this up.
Yeah, exactly. Just a high-level overview for us to end on.
Yep. And so with that,
I think it's time for questions. Am I right?
Yeah. So we've got a few in the chat. I'll try and grab those. All right, so IP range restrictions. Our company is spread across multiple locations in the US. It's hard to come up with specific range given developers work from home. Is there any way to limit all access that should be within a specific company? So if you are allowing your users to work from home and you don't force them to first connect to your corporate network, then IP range restrictions may not be advisable to you. Right? It's not a control that necessarily meets your needs. What I would recommend though is, enforcing single sign-on and enforcing your own multi-factor authentication. So this should align to the security policies that you already have in place for your other cloud applications. IP range restrictions are not going to be for everyone. If you allow users to work from home and connect directly to cloud applications, you probably don't need to implement IP range restrictions on our cloud. Robot log exports. Can we add IP range on these log settings so that we can whitelist the IP range on our private cloud? The answer today is unfortunately no. It is an OAuth connection, so you can, we are going cloud service to cloud service. It's a reasonably secure connection. We have that feature in our backlog to add IP range whitelist for robot log export, but it's not currently available today. Malware scanner. Is there a UiPath tool or is it up to IT org level scanning? So UiPath does not provide a malware scanner out of the box. Simply put, we are an automation company. We included a static code analyzer in our tools because automations use XAML or XML to define their automation flow, and most static code analyzers don't really understand that language. They understand common programming languages, and if you're familiar with programming languages, most of them are, C, C++, or based on that, even Java or Python are still sort of derived from those languages that were created in the 70s. So it's a lot easier to, write rules around it. We didn't expect every static code analyzer company to just come up with rules for UiPath. So we took all the best practices we could find and made the tool available for you. But we're not a malware scanning company, and we're not really trying to be. Your IT organization likely already has deployed an EDR tool like CrowdStrike Falcon or Microsoft Defender ATP, or one of many other tools on your endpoints. Now, if they've already done that, then just make sure that they're scanning your developer machines. And that way, when your developers pull down new activity packages or new files to work with their automations, it's scanning them. Now, you could also insert a malware scanner as part of your DevOps pipeline if you have a mature CI/CD pipeline. We do at UiPath, so all of our activity packages, all of our software downloads, they go through static code analyzer, they go through a malware scanner, and they actually get pen tested as well by our internal pen test team and an external pen test team once a year, in addition to an actual bug bounty program where we invite private security researchers to find flaws in our code and our products as well. Is there a defined retention period for Orchestrator logs? Yes. So audit logs, both at the platform level and at the individual service level, so for Orchestrator, are retained for 2 years. So we want to make sure that audit logs stay available to you. Robot logs have a retention period of 30 days, and that's because you can have, as I said, thousands of robots connected to our clouds. We allow you to set that log level up to verbose or debug level when you're trying to do things, as well as write your own logs. So the storage is significant depending on your settings, which is why we allow you to automatically export them to a cloud storage blob, so you can pull them off automatically, ingest them, review them, and then define your own retention period, or move them off to a more economical storage, so like a long-term retention storage if you need to. Those are all the questions in the chat. I'm happy to take additional questions, either chat or if you want to unmute, please, we'd be happy to answer anything you might have.
Kevin, I do want to point out that I did get a direct message from one of the participants who, rightfully so, let us know that we have 2 steps labeled number 5 on slide 14. So if we can go back to that slide and just clarify the flow, so the credential store proxy flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just pull this up. Yeah, sure enough, we do have 2 steps number 5.
Apologies for that.
So, you know, if we can, oops. All right, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here in the center. And then this should be number 6 as the final step where Orchestrator responds to the robots, returning the credential back to the robot. So thank you for calling that out. We will absolutely fix it. Yeah. Okay.
And we got another question.
Is there a plan to increase the integration of Studio with AZDO? Is that
Azure DevOps?
Yeah, I believe that's Azure DevOps. Yes and no. So one of the things we have started to do is we have an initial integration with automation ops into CI/CD tools, including Azure DevOps. So we've increased sort of the integration for enabling governance and flow in terms of defining policy to include the CI/CD pipeline level. In terms of actually integrating Studio with Azure DevOps, it kind of depends on what you're looking for there, whether you're looking for security features or just more things. If you want to message me directly, we'll be happy to take that to our security or not our security, excuse me, our Studio team, and we can reply directly. So code commit and merge. Yeah.
So we have an integration with GitHub available as of right now. That allows you to control source code.
So I think this really comes down to, we have integration with TFS, right? Which Azure DevOps aligns with the same protocol. However, it's not exactly the same. And so, yes, there's probably something more we could do in terms of integration. If you don't mind leaving your email to one of us, we would be happy to follow up with our studio team to see if that's on our roadmap. It's a little outside of direct security questions, so I'm not sure of the information off the top of my head. Does UiPath support for managing dependencies and scanning vulnerability, given XAMLs are not open source? Yeah, so this is an interesting question that we see every so often. So before an activity package is ever published, right? We scan everything. So we have a number of tools in place to detect vulnerabilities in open source software, as well as mitigate attacks such as dependency confusion or other sort of supply chain attacks that could come to you. So everything is being ingested into our own source code repository, our own effectively a GitHub first. It's scanned for malware. It's also scanned for open source license issues and open source vulnerabilities. Those are then published via our pipeline to effectively an Azure repo that we control and own. And that is what Studio connects to. Now, Studio, behind the scenes, when it connects, is actually validating the certificate, the digitally signed certificate of that NuGet package when it pulls it down. So it's validating both authenticity and integrity when it loads it onto your machine, right? Now, XAML files are, as you said, they're XML, they are not code. So things like Nexus or Sonatype or even some of your more static code analyzer tools such as Veracode, they are not going to be able to really understand XML in a way that translates back to code, which is why we included this workflow analyzer tool to act as a static code analyzer on top of that. So you have a lot of trust in terms of the process that we've put in place to ensure those NuGet packages are secure when we publish them. They are ensured to be accurate and authentic coming down into your environment. And then you have the ability to set policy and review what your developers are actually putting into the automations. Now, all this automated tools for security scanning is never going to be 100% replacement for an actual code review. And we still recommend that based on sort of your risk level, or perhaps just highly risky automations, or automations that are going against highly regulated applications, or applications or systems that work with high risk data. Can you give a few words about Insight's integration of orchestrated data? Is it the same retention period for Insights as already said for Orchestrator? I am not positive on that off the top of my head. Again, if you leave your contact information, I'd be happy to verify that for you and provide you an answer back. We are getting close to the end of time, so just want to call out if there are any other questions. We'd be, happy to try and address them. Or again, if you provide us some information, we're happy to get the exact answer for you and come back and provide it. So we don't want to leave you with any unanswered questions.
Yes. And also remember that you can also join us next week for the fourth session. Rohit, if you want to give more details about that.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. So I have posted the link to the overall Automation Cloud series on the chat. So please do check out the sessions that you will be able to register for the 4th, 5th, and 6th sessions, as well as view the recording for the past 2 sessions. The recording for this session will be uploaded on the same registration link today by tonight itself. So you will be able to access that and share it with your colleagues, whoever you feel would be benefiting from this. Awesome. Perfect. So next session is on maximizing efficiency and security in large-scale automation rollout. So really looking forward to have all of you there. Please do also share this detail with your colleagues so that they can also make the benefit out of the live interaction and get their question answered. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chetak, for your time. I think this was really interesting. Good questions as well coming on the chat. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you.